Ever wondered what it's like growing up with undiagnosed ADHD to be diagnosed later in adult life? In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you my journey towards diagnosis and hope that it will help some of you on your journey in the world of adult ADHD. Hi guys, welcome back and I hope you're all well. So in this video, as asked by a few of you, I'm going to be sharing my journey to my diagnosis at the ripe old age of 39. So growing up, I knew I was different. I didn't know why. Always struggled with friendships and things like that. But funnily enough, at primary school, I didn't really struggle, but I actually put that down to the fact that I did ballet 6 days a week and it was my absolute obsession, and I still swear to this day that it actually saved me in those school years in life. If your child is actually interested in anything, shows interest even in a game of golf, jump on it. You know, get the child really interested, because with ballet it really saved me. I can't stress that enough. So after primary school, I actually, due to family circumstances, ended up in the private education sector, and that's when I really struggled. That's when things got really tough. That's when my self-esteem absolutely hit the floor. My confidence was non-existent. By the age of 14, 15, I had found other things to focus on rather than ballet, so I actually gave it up. That was the biggest mistake I think I ever made. So I'm sure some of you have noticed that I now have a load of words written all over my wall. The reason being is because I have no idea about editing. I had this great idea in my head, but trying to do it was just impossible. So I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way, pen and paper, and I shall be reading them out to you. So these are actually taken from my real school reports. So I'll go through them now. So, her total lack of work showed up her complete idleness. Undoubtedly, she has the ability, but refuses to do anything unless supervised. Still lazy most of the time. I was insulted to receive her work. After a half-hearted attempt to improve her standard of work, she has returned to her pathetic don't care attitude. Rarely brings necessary books and equipment to lessons. Easily distracted. Immature attitude. Wastes complete time talking about trivia. Her examination work was appalling. And I love this one. Unless she applies herself, she's going to end up a complete embarrassment to herself. So can you imagine what that did to my already self-esteem that was on the floor, which is now possibly heading for hibernation? It just destroyed me growing up. Just those constant comments. It wasn't just at school. It was in, at home, in personal life, by friends, family, and at the end of the day, you can't just keep saying that to somebody, because you are knocking their self-esteem, and when they grow up, they're not going to end up being confident, they're not going to like themselves, probably end up with imposter syndrome, or I can't do anything because that's all I've been told in life. So please comment below if you're diagnosed late in life and you're lucky enough to still have your school reports. Share them with us. So I ended up obviously doing my GCSEs. I actually got 5 C's and above, which is pure fluke as far as I was concerned. So I left school, but then my parents convinced the school to keep me on at 6th form. I only did a year of that, didn't interest me. So then I tried college, and college life was amazing for my social life, and that's all I cared about. So I was registered to do business studies. It was of absolutely no interest to me whatsoever, hence why I've just given up a charity, because I just don't understand it. So it had absolutely no interest. but great for the social life. And as you know, our brains are wired for interest. So if we're not interested in something, you're not going to have our full attention. So I left college early, obviously, and then I worked in a few shops part-time, and then at 18 I got a job as a courier in London, and it was delivering to embassies, so it's delivering documents and passports to embassies up in London. Absolutely loved it, but as you can imagine, I actually got more car parking tickets than a warden, and ended up losing that one as well. So at the tender age of 18, I decided that my parents' home life wasn't for me anymore, and I wanted to go and explore the world, so I ended up running away. And at the age of 19, I met my now husband, Mr. P. And by the age of 20, I had my first child, my son. And then by the age of 22, I also had a daughter, but I really struggled. And I think that's where people with undiagnosed adult ADHD, when they have children, when they have to do the housework, when they have to do jobs around the home, look after the kids, try and keep them alive maybe, things like that. I think that's when it actually starts coming to light that there is a major issue. But they were always extremely well looked after and they were clean. Then came the drug addiction. So my drug addiction was in fact amphetamine. I was given it once, and it just made me feel calm, and it stopped all the voices in my head, my voices, not strangers' voices, and it just, I don't know, I just got stuff done, and I could do the housework and I could look after the kids. Not that I couldn't before, obviously, but like all your friends, well, my friends around me had their kids in, strict routines, had strict bedtimes. I mean, mine were lucky to be fed at 10 o'clock at night. But when I took the drug, and, people who know me know that I am an open book and I am quite honest. And I want to be honest because I want to help other women in my situation. It just made me feel normal and calm, and it even helped me sleep. So over the years of taking the amphetamine, it had a massive toll. It had a massive effect on me in the end. Mentally, I became very paranoid. It's an illegal substance. Now I actually take the legal form of amphetamine, which is quite weird. But it just shows that it worked, but it should have been in a legal form. And in those days, I was at the GP, and I'm not kidding you, maybe every day, saying there's something wrong. I was getting these bouts of depression. By this point, I'd then had a third child, and I did have quite nasty postnatal depression after him. So obviously I was under the GP anyway. So, I was diagnosed with depression and given antidepressants all the time, and then I went to see a psychiatrist. I was diagnosed with bipolar, took bipolar medication, put on large amounts of weight, but I just kept going back to the GP saying, this isn't me, this isn't working, this isn't what I've got. I'm not a medical professional, but the antidepressants just didn't work. They didn't do anything. They didn't even touch the sides. So I was really struggling to cope. I just couldn't cope anymore. Things were so bad. But then there was a light bulb moment, and my third child was diagnosed with ADHD at 7. And we used to call him Bouncing Benny. He was never a naughty child. He was just funny. He just bounced off the walls, and but the school had obviously picked up on it. So he went and got his diagnosis and got his medication, and he was put under an amazing ADHD nurse who we have here in Surrey, and she knew all my struggles, and she knew all the diagnosis that I'd had, and I'd explained to her, just something doesn't sit right. I'm not depressed. Depression was coming in bouts. It was up and down, which I suppose a psychiatrist who doesn't really know much about adult ADHD could actually look at someone like that. If they're saying, oh, I'm getting, depressed 1 minute and then I'm really happy the next minute, that's signs of bipolar. So I understand that. But there needs to be a lot more awareness, and there needs to be a lot more training, and just stop the stigma of this naughty child syndrome, because I'm 46 years old. I'm not a child. My parents, they not punished me, but they, I had a stable home life. There was no reason really why I should have acted that way. It should have been picked up, but hey, shit happens. So, after going off on tangent, so we were with the ADHD nurse that we saw regularly, and I explained to her all my issues, so she knew everything. So after about a year, she was like, do you know what, Jo? You do realise that ADHD is actually highly genetic, and I think it came from you. I think actually that may be your problem. I was like, wow, really? Like, ADHD is for kids, it's not for adults. But anyway, went with it. Why not? So went to the GP, and luckily enough, my dad, he won't accept it, but he has OCD, and he kept all my school reports. So I went through all the reports, and I got given a number of a lady who ran a local adult ADHD support group. So I spoke with her for about 3 hours, got off the phone, and thought, oh my God, I'm not going mad. I've actually got ADHD. I am 99% sure I've got ADHD. So off I went to the GP, and I remember sitting outside the GP's office like, how the hell am I going to explain to this stranger that I've got ADHD and I need to be referred? So I ended up sitting with the GP, obviously, and sat with him for quite a long time, explained to him, obviously he went through my medical reports, and I showed him the school reports, and I told him about the drugs and what the ADHD nurse said, and he said, yeah, that's fine, I'll refer you. I was like, wow, oh my God. And I was lucky back then, now you're going to wait 3 years plus. Sorry, but you are. And I was lucky, I only waited 6 months. And when something's wrong with you, and you've put your finger on it, and what's wrong with you, you're 99% sure, you've then got to wait 6 months to see someone about it. And that was the longest, I must admit, 6 months of my life. Yeah, it was. So the day came, and you have to take someone with you who's known you most of your life and knows you really well, for them to explain to the psychiatrist, all your symptoms. So I took Mr. P, and the day came, and I was so nervous. I felt sick. It was awful. Anyway, so we went into this room, and he asked me loads of questions, and we filled out the Connell scales reports and things like that you have to do anyway. That is the diagnosis pathway. So we did that, and then he was asking my husband loads of questions, and it actually turned into, he just told him the truth, basically, that she's disorganized, she used to take drugs, she does this, she's lazy, she can't focus, she flips from one thing to the other. I say to her, can you go to the shop and buy a newspaper, a loaf of bread and a pint of milk, and she comes back with a new mop. What's that about? Well, it was shiny, it said buy me, and the milk and bread and crap is just boring, isn't it? Then came the moment. So we were told, go and wait outside, and I will call you back in 10 minutes time. So we sat outside, and I said to my husband, that's it. They think I'm a complete loon, and they're going to cart me off in a straitjacket, and this is it. This is the end of the road. And he appeared at the door, and he was like, okay, you can come in now. And we sat down. He was like, yeah, you've got severe combined ADHD. So as some of you may know, there are 3 different forms of ADHD. You have hyperactivity, inattentive, or combined. So that's the hyperactivity and inattentive all together. So then we had a conversation about medication, and because of my previous drug history, taking stimulants, he didn't really want to take the risk, so he put me on a non-stimulant. Fair enough, but it took 6 weeks for it to kick in. It was called Strattera, and yeah, so I left with a prescription. We got the tablets straight away because it was like, oh, new medication, let's see if this works, can't wait, really excited. And I actually sat there and looked at this box of medication for like 2 weeks. I just didn't want to take it. I didn't want to change as a person. I didn't want to change my personality. I think it's, you know, the whole stigma around it is around the medication as well, that it's going to change you as a person. But so I spoke to the lady who ran the adult group, and she said, no, Jo, no, take that medication, then it will be the real you. That's who you should have been, you know, basically taking this medication. So anyway, once the excitement and the new medication and things like that wore off, anger set in. And you know, I do speak to a lot of adults who have been diagnosed, and they all go through the same, especially being diagnosed late in life. And you know, I failed at everything. I destroyed everything in my path. I was like a hurricane. But you know, it's really hard, and you end up dragging, it feels like a rucksack. So all these words, all these things that I was told growing up, you know, by family and friends, add that to this rucksack, and you've got your diagnosis and you've got your medication. That's not going to make all those words disappear. That's not going to make you feel any better. Yeah, I was really angry, and I did have to have therapy, because I just thought, you know what, is this all it was? But compared to what I'd been through before, this was all it was, you know. And I just thought, it's fine, I can just take this tablet and everything's going to be fine. So obviously after the medication started setting in, I decided to attend this lady's support groups for adults. Took me a while, I must admit, to walk through the front door, and I did actually take my daughter the first couple of times because my anxiety was, I wouldn't have gone in. I loved it. I have, you know, I still have friends from that group 6-7 years ago who I'm still in contact with, and just being able to sit there and be me and not have to put on this act. You know, growing up and living adult life, I felt like Wurzel Gummidge. I had different heads. I had to have different heads for different occasions, and I had to be somebody I wasn't, and just to try and fit in, because that's how it's been all my life. So I started going to the support groups, and then I absolutely loved it, met so many lovely people, and then I thought, you know what, I'm going to volunteer with them. So I did. But someone actually said to me, you know, now you're diagnosed, don't just rely on medication. You need to understand, and you need to learn about your own ADHD itself. You know, what are your triggers, what are your sensitivities? I was like, yeah, right, of course I do. Medication does that for me. I don't need that crap. It'll be fine. Don't worry about it. Yeah, it wasn't. So remember the anger that I spoke about? It began resonating with me, and it was just growing bigger and bigger and bigger, and it just took over my life. Even with medication, even with the diagnosis, it just took over. So obviously I was volunteering, and then a year or so later the charity unfortunately closed. So I took a year out, but the amount of messages I was getting from parents and adults saying there's nothing in Surrey, you need to do, you know, we desperately need help. So that's when ADHD Surrey was formed. That's another story. So it wasn't really until probably 2 years ago that I was still struggling, changed medications, couldn't really take Strattera anymore. That's another story. Then I tried Concerta, very sensitive to methylphenidate, so I couldn't have that. Now I'm on Elvance and dexamphetamine top up, like in the afternoon. So it still wasn't working. This anger was still resonating, and the bitterness and my triggers and sensitivities, I just wasn't paying any attention to it whatsoever. So I thought about what this person said to me a couple of years previously, and I thought, you know what, maybe I should. So I did, and I sort of started looking at YouTube videos because I'm a visual processor, I'm a visual learner. So I started looking at YouTube videos about ADHD, came across the amazing Jessica in America. How to ADHD is absolutely brilliant. So I used to watch her all the time, and I thought, no, I can't carry on like this. The medication on its own isn't working, and according to NICE guidelines, we should actually have medication taken alongside other psychotherapies, but we don't get it. Anyway, that's another story. But one thing is, do not be ashamed of your diagnosis. You know, the stigma around it just doesn't seem to be going away. It's not a childhood disorder, it's not a behaviour disorder, it's actually a neurodevelopmental disorder. And you know, it's just, people think it's just a naughty kids disorder, right? Too many numbers, bad parenting, you know, but that's what the media are portraying, and it just needs to stop. So it affects your working memory, your executive function, you know, which is our self-management system, which develops actually a lot more slowly than a neurotypical brain. So we know what we have to do in life, or in a task, or a project, or at work, but we just can't do it. You know, we have the absolute best intentions, but our executive system isn't always developed enough or functions well enough to effectively help us do it. And it's just as frustrating for us as it is for you, seriously. The overwhelm also as an adult is absolutely massive. I've been in some really dark places with overwhelm and meltdowns, and which I will talk about in other videos, because I do think that needs to be raised as well. But you need to learn about your triggers and your sensitivities. You know, I have a sensitivity to people eating a bag of crisps. I could seriously harm someone. It just, I don't know, I get this feeling in my belly, and it just makes me so angry. It's just someone eating a bag of crisps, right? But to us with ADHD, with our sensitivities and triggers, it's massive. I mean, you know, some adults say to me, oh, someone eating an apple, or someone just eating, or I don't know, someone's emotion, just anything can trigger it. And, you know, we can't really help it, but we can learn to control it. It's also really, really important to explain to your family and friends, tell them about your diagnosis. Don't be ashamed of it, but explain to them what your triggers are. You need to learn about them and what triggers you and your sensitivities and things like that. But if you explain it to your friends and family, then they can try and avoid maybe some of those triggers and sensitivities and things like that, so that you don't end up kicking off, basically. So that, in a nutshell, is my journey to adult ADHD diagnosis, and it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. I have absolutely turned my life around in the last 6 years with the help of some amazing people and my family and friends. Some people didn't get it, but you know what? That's their problem at the end of the day. But if you need any help, please comment below. If you want any advice, please comment below. I will be doing more videos on the subject of adult ADHD. So please like and subscribe, and I shall see you in my next video.